if you're a CISO, security manager, or responsible for AI policy, and you have not been watching this Texas Republican Senate runoff race, and you don't think this has anything to do with your job, you could be very wrong. Hang on with me while I discuss how the outcomes of this race could affect AI governance policy nationwide for years to come. I'm Elliot Mattice. I work at the intersection of cybersecurity, federal compliance, and geopolitical risk. On this channel, I translate upstream signals into practical insight so security leaders can act before the window closes. The Texas Republican Senate primary race probably wasn't on the top of your ways to spend your Tuesday evening, but you may want to pay close attention to the outcome of this race because you have two candidates with vastly different worldviews on how to govern and legislate around AI. Now, I am not a political talking head. I'm not going to spew rhetoric here. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, or who's right and who's wrong. What I will tell you is how to read the signals that are unfolding today that have potential outcomes and risks 6 months from now. I will be giving you information on how you can prepare early, the decisions you can make now that lead to stronger positioning and reduced risk in the future. To answer the questions of so what and who cares up front, there are 3 takeaways I want you to get out of this. Number 1, AI policy and direction is changing. It's fragmenting into 2 lanes, capability and standards, and accountability and enforcement. AI regulation hits you as either prove it works or prove you're not liable. You should be preparing for both. 2, policy isn't text, it's behavior. Stop tracking laws and regulations, start tracking behavior. That's where policy is derived. AI policy forms through hearings and procurement language and agency posture. Law is the last mile. 3, your AI governance isn't real until it survives scrutiny. Most AI governance programs are designed to look responsible. If your controls only exist when you have time to prepare a response, they don't exist at all. You'll be required to prove AI compliance and safety more thoroughly. Today, we're going to apply the Upstream Risk Framework to this story to understand the players, who they are, their motivations, what they want and what they must defend, and their moves, what actions they might take in the near and midterm. And most importantly, what decisions can you make today to protect yourself from incidents and risk in the future? So let's get started. While this story has broad reach across political parties and future elections, I want to focus on the 2 primary players, John Cornyn and Steve Paxton. Cornyn and Paxton will be battling it out in a runoff election this May to determine who will face off against the Democratic nominee, James Tallarico. Starting with John Cornyn. Cornyn is the incumbent senator who's been in his seat for about 20 years. In this position, he is a Senate institutionalist with national security lens. He's comfortable with moving policy through defense bills and committees. He's also the sponsor of the AI Guard Act that was signed into law by Trump in 2025. The other candidate is Steve Paxton. Paxton is the current Attorney General in Texas, having held that job since 2015. His world is law enforcement, accountability, and litigation. He is trained to look for responsibility, not build institutions. These backgrounds matter because it is how they see the world and how they will drive AI policy legislation. Cornyn's instinct is to build an institution. Paxton's instinct is to scrutinize. Now let's look at their motivations. Cornyn's motivation when it comes to AI policy is to build a national capability. He's looking to use legislative and procurement processes to invest in AI as national security apparatus. China comes into the conversation pretty quickly here, as the U.S. and China are in an AI arms race. Cornyn is looking to answer the question, how does the United States build an AI power and not fall behind? As the sponsor to the AI Guard Act, he's already shown his desire to use legislation and committees and bills to advance his policy. Paxton's motivation comes from a place of risk and exposure. He's looking to answer the question of who gets harmed when a system goes wrong, who's accountable when data moves somewhere it shouldn't, and what happens when an AI company deploys tools faster than it understands the risk. Those motivations create different moves, and who ends up being the nominee will set their perspective on AI into motion. At this point in the election cycle, moves are tougher to predict. However, it does not leave us without any information to use. We'll start with Cornyn and his motivations, his moves. Cornyn is an established senator. He sits on the Finance Committee, as well as the chair for the Subcommittee on International Trade, Customs, and Global Competitiveness, and the Subcommittee for Energy, Natural Resources, and Infrastructure. He has voted in support of the U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, as well as the CHIPS Act, both of which have earmarked substantial funding for building a national capability in advanced research and microchip manufacturing. He has established himself as a strong supporter of these types of initiatives and is successful in getting legislation out of committee and onto the floor for a vote. It's safe to assume, should he win the election, that his priorities would remain the same in supporting advanced technology and AI. Those priorities would not change. Expect Cornyn to support investments in key policy areas that build AI capability to protect U.S. supply chains and investments in technology. Remember, Cornyn is an institution builder. There's no reason to believe that he'll falter from that position. Now, next, we'll look at Paxton. If elected, Paxton will be a junior senator and not get the juicy subcommittee or committee assignments that have the most influence on legislation. He'll need to build consensus with his policy of managing AI risk and exposure. While that's a tough hill to climb as a junior senator, there's already precedents out there from the White House and Pentagon to use the punitive measures to control AI policy, as we recently saw with the way the Pentagon and the White House responded when Anthropic refused to allow them to use the Claude model in ways that they felt they had to. Should Paxton become the nominee in May, I'd expect him to start building relationships with senators such as Blumenthal, Hawley, Heinrich, and Young, among others, who've shown already their desire to rein AI in over risks of usage and misuse. We've covered a lot of background. Now let's look at what cyber pros such as yourself should be doing today. How do you prepare yourself for the outcomes of this election? All right, let's move on from analysis to action. We can talk all day about what might happen, but what are the most advantageous decisions and actions you can make today to prepare your organization for a number of potential future outcomes? Remember those key takeaways I mentioned at the beginning? Now we're going to go and revisit them in depth. The first was fragmentation of AI policy into capability standards on one side and accountability and regulation on the other. So how do you prepare for both? First, you need to write the narrative of your AI story by describing where AI is used, what you control, and what you are tightening next. This should be an executive summary, so there's no need to get into the details. If you can't explain your AI governance clearly in 2 minutes, you don't have a governance problem, you have a clarity problem. Second, get serious about the evidence. Much like any other compliance program out there, AI requires evidence. Start by gathering the artifacts that show how outputs are monitored, the limitations, the owners and decision makers, the logs. The outcome here is to build defensibility and repeatability. Third, stop isolating AI risk from vendor risk. Unless you have built your AI system from the ground up entirely isolated within your security boundary, you are relying on other infrastructure, other models, other tools and APIs, other platforms. So you have to ask yourself, if a vendor became a problem tomorrow, would I know what breaks? Again, all you have to do is look at the decision to blacklist Anthropic as an example of a supply chain risk. Fourth, do some serious self-reflection. Which of these pressure lanes are you weakest in? Is it the governance maturity? Is it the defensibility? Do you have a strength in documentation and validation with clear owners and escalation and process, but you lack the evidence to back it up? Or do you have great logging, great incident response, but lack the governance maturity and policy to support it? Take an honest look at your weak points and start by fixing them. By understanding where the AI governance and legislative policies may be heading, now you've given yourself months of a head start. Finally, keep the radar on the election and where the winds of AI policy are pointing. Remember, policy is law. Remember, policy is not law, it's behavior. If you wait for regulation to be written, waiting for regulation to be written is the worst strategy. Pressure arrives first. Regulation just makes it official. Plan for eventual outcomes by picking a system or workflow that touches critical business functions and ask yourself if you can explain clearly if someone starts asking questions. Document where the data comes from, what is the sensitivity and classification, where does the data go, and who can control the AI prompts and agent commands. Would you know if the behavior drifted? And under what conditions would you hit the big red button to shut it all down? All right, so that's the point. Before you or your organization gets stuck in an uncomfortable situation where you have to explain your way around your AI governance policy or drum up some evidence that may or may not exist, use these few months to see where the policy direction is going. Prepare now, and you'll reap the benefits later. I hope this has been helpful. We'll check back on this story in a few months. We'll watch the runoff election in May and see how this continues through November. I'll be checking in to see how these candidates are responding and promoting their policies around AI and what other AI policy developments may happen in the meantime. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, I would love to hear them. And again, hope this has been helpful. Like and subscribe if this has been meaningful to you. This is Upstream Risk. We'll see you next time.